Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamerspro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. It was yesterday evening. I was going through the internet and I came across a sit down that Charles Barkley had on the Dan Patrick Show. He always goes on the Dan Patrick Show. But for this particular visit, I was very, very keen to hear what he had to say because, as you guys know, the NBA rejected the offer from Warner Brothers Discovery and TNT Sports, so they're no longer going to be partners in that deal. And Charles Barkley basically made his thoughts clear about this. He stated this publicly, where he essentially said that the NBA prioritized the NBA and the NBA players prioritize profit over the fans. Right? He stated his opinion. Everyone knows about this. But there's another side to this, because what we know is that this means that inside the NBA is only going to be around for one more year. So the question then becomes, what happens after that? Now, if you've been following the news around Charles Barkley over the last few months, you will know that he has said that this is going to be his last year in sports media, that he's going to be retiring, right? He has stated that this is going to be his last year in sports. So with that background information, let's get to what he said. So he goes on the Dan Patrick Show, and the first thing they start talking about is this new deal with the NBA and Amazon. They're discussing that, right? And then it gets to the inevitable point where Dan Patrick says to him, so what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? Right? Have you been in conversations with any of these networks? He said no. Have you been in conversations with ESPN specifically? And then Charles Barkley said, I've been in conversation on network. He's like, have you been talking to ESPN? Or Amazon or whatever. Then he says, and then as he's talking about it, Charles basically says he would be willing to listen to any offer that any of them could bring if the offer is essentially one he can't refuse. And he's not against the idea of going to ESPN and work with people like Stephen A. Smith, or go to Amazon or go to NBC. And I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting, given the fact that he just said that he's looking to retire. So what we want to do now is want to play exactly what Charles had to say. I want you guys to take a listen to it in its entirety. And then we're going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to what Charles Barkley had to say here.
Like I say, right now, I'm not trying to be this or this or this. Right now, my intention is to retire, because then, you've done it quite a few times, in fairness, went to another network, started over. I'm not sure. I love TNT so much and the people here. I don't know if I want to go to another network. Like, I'll never say never, but right now my intention is to stay to last and go out with a bang. We're going to give everything we got next year, because out of loyalty to the NBA and their fans. And I want to say to all the fans out there, man, you guys been great. You guys been great to me. When I was in Tahoe a couple of weeks ago, everybody's saying, guys, don't go. I said, dude, we don't want to go, but we're going. First of all, let me say this. This is like the worst kept secret in the history of sports broadcasting. Like, we knew we were done like 5-6 months ago. They're like, well, we're still alive. We're still alive. I'm like, yo, man, please stop lying to us. We know it's over. Just go ahead and announce it. So there is a sense of relief, to be honest with you, to the employees. But I've been spending a lot of time with the employees lately, and they just wanted it to be over because they got to start planning for their future.
Yeah, but why can't you guys still do your show? If I'm Amazon, why wouldn't Amazon say, why don't we capitalize on the best, pregame show that there is out there, and bring you guys in, keep everybody in Atlanta, keep all the producers, and you guys, just produce your show? Well,
first of all, you have to ask Ernie that, because Ernie is the guy who probably would never leave Turner. But Dan, everything's on the table.
Has somebody spoken to Amazon?
I have spoken to all three networks.
So you spoke to Amazon?
I have spoke to all three networks.
So you spoke to Amazon?
I have spoke to all three networks, Dan, who got the NBA going forward.
I know Amazon is where you can
Let me say this. I have spoken for the last 3 months. I've spoken to all the networks.
That doesn't sound like somebody who's going to retire.
Well, Dan, I'm going to listen. First of all, I'd be stupid not to take their call. But the beauty of this situation, I don't have to make any decisions for a year, Dan. But I told all 3 networks, hey, I'm honored, I'm flattered that y'all want to talk to me, but let's see what happens in a year. So that's the great thing about it from my perspective. I don't have to make any decisions for a year. But like I say, my intention, I'm not trying to play hardball. I'm not trying to get attention. My attention right now is to retire. Like I say, Ernie would never go to another network. I have not talked to Kenny and Shaq, but I have listened to everybody. And like I say, I got a year, Dan. I ain't got to worry about this. All this stuff is just noise for a year, to be honest with you.
Okay, would you go someplace without Ernie or without, let's say, Shaq and Kenny? Let's say Ernie is not leaving, staying TNT Atlanta. Would you, on your own, go to another network to be part of their NBA broadcast?
I'm not frozen. I'm thinking. That's a great question, Dan. I don't know how to answer that question. You know, I ain't gonna never lie to you. I don't know how to answer that question right now because I don't know. First of all, I don't know who's got what going forward. Like when I had these conversations with these companies, they're like, we're finalizing what we're going to have.
Okay.
So I would have to sit back. Hey, ESPN, tell me what you guys got and what you want me to do. Amazon, tell me what you got and what you want me to do. NBC, tell me what you got and what you want me to do. Until they finalize what they got, because there was rumors when we were like, we're going to lose the even if we retain the NBA, we're going to lose a day of the week. We're going to lose the conference finals every other year. So when I talk to these companies, I says, get back to me when you know what you got.
Okay. That's fair. Amazon's got the money, though.
Dan, everybody's got money. They're paying $2 billion a year.
No. Amazon's got money.
Hey, I'd be a fool not to say I'm not going to listen to Amazon. I'm not that stupid.
I agree. I think you're going to continue to do it. You got to talk to somebody. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I do, Dan. I'll talk to them all.
So you heard what Charles Barkley had to say, right? You heard what he had to say. I don't know if you guys saw that or listened to that full show. He also spoke about the fact that he signed I think a $210 million contract, paying him, I think for 10 years, paying him $20 million a year with Warner Bros. So I don't know how all that's going to work. Now that they're canceling the show, I don't know how any of that's going to work. So you have that going on over there. But if you listen to him carefully, he said that it would be foolish of him, number one, to not take their calls or listen to them. That's number one. Number two, if you listen towards the tail end of that audio, if you listened, he said, I have spoken to them. They have reached out to me. And essentially he said, what do you guys currently have going on? What shows? What's coming down the pipeline? Does that sound like somebody that's not interested potentially? If you're retired and you're saying you're done, would you be willing to listen to any offers? Of course not. You're done. You're retired. But for the simple fact that he's still willing to listen to them and hear them out, that says something. Let's talk about the potential of him going to ESPN. Could Charles Barkley go to ESPN? Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. Right? Because number one, they're probably the biggest platform out there. So he's going to be on a big platform. Number two, I think if Charles Barkley goes to ESPN, one could make an argument that he would be the biggest voice personality at ESPN. I don't think it's a question. Charles Barkley's better than Pat McAfee. Charles Barkley's better than Stephen A. Smith. Let's just keep it a buck. All right, let's just keep it. What Charles says reverberates around, has more reverberation and ripple effects in the sports media ecosystem than any of those guys. Just the facts, right? This is just what it is. Here's the interesting part, however. I'm not sure Charles would be the prototypical fit that ESPN would want. Here's what I mean by this. ESPN is like any network. You have left-leaning networks, you have right-leaning networks. ESPN is a LeBron James network, left-leaning network, and all of that. Charles, I don't really know what his political views are, because there's some views where he seems to be very conservative and there's some views where he seems to be very liberal. But one thing you do know about him is that when it comes to talking about sports and giving his views on what he is seeing, Charles Barkley doesn't sit up there and twerk it up all day long like the vast majority of people at ESPN do. Give you an example. No one in ESPN is going to have the courage to speak about a LeBron James the way that Charles Barkley does on nobody. There's nobody. Not Stephen A. Smith, not nobody. Charles Barkley his views are so strong that it has caused him to have fractured relationships with a bunch of different NBA players. He fell out with Michael Jordan. I don't really think he's friendly with Kevin Durant. He's had a public back and forth with LeBron James himself for some comments that he made on TNT when he said, does he want all the help and all of that stuff with him and Shaq going back and forth. That's Charles Barkley. And I don't know if ESPN is going to give Charles Barkley that level of freedom to say what he thinks, because it doesn't fit into that network. ESPN is a very transparent network when it comes to the agendas that they want to push. It's quite clear. It's clear as day. And if you put someone like him on the show, he'd be like a renegade on the platform. He'd be like a renegade. He would be like the odd man out. I could see Charles Barkley making a lot of those people on that network look quite uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, looking at how people behave on ESPN, there seems to be a lot of fakeness that goes on that network. I'm just keeping it funky as somebody looking on the outside in. Whenever you have somebody on a particular panel that gives a view that's not an ESPN talking point, all of the other people on the panel begin to get very uncomfortable. You can see it visually. Visual body language. You can see it. They get visually uncomfortable. Oh, did he say that? Oh, wow, he said that? Like, oh, he said that? You sure want to say that? Were you supposed to say that? That's ESPN for you. Very weird vibes that they got going on over there. Very weird, very cliquey. You go to college, you've been to high school, you've been around people like very weird. They got that kind of weird energy and vibe about them. Whereas Charles Barkley, he seems like somebody that if you're around people like him, they're going to be saying some real, you know what? They're going to be saying some real, you know what? And it ain't going to be a bunch of politically correct view. They're going to call it, like, they're going to be saying some real stuff, right? So you're going to get a more raw version of sports, which again is the reason why he's the best in the business. So to bring him to a network like ESPN, I'm not sure it would work. I'm just keeping it funky with you. Number one. Number two, he would be the biggest name on the network. He is bigger than Stephen A. Smith. Sorry, tell y'all. He is. So what you going to do? You're going to make him a contributor? Now, he also says something. I don't know if we played that. He said that one of the most important things he's looking at right now is not the money, is the schedule. It's a schedule. Because he doesn't want to be working like a slave. He's made jokes about this, about ESPN, how they got people like Stephen A. Smith up there working, 48 hours a day, damn near, right? Obviously, only 24 hours, you get the joke. Working like 6 hours a day. Charles Barkley ain't on that type of time, right? Is he going to have his own show? Is that going to be what he's going to want to do? I don't think he's going to probably want to have his own show in the way like Stephen A. Smith does. He may want to have a panel, but who would you have on a panel with Charles Barkley that would keep? If I could think of some people at ESPN, here are the people I would think of that I think would work well with Charles Barkley if they had a show at ESPN. I'm going to give you guys some personalities, 3 personalities. You can pick a moderator. I would say Charles Barkley. I would say Chris Mad Dog Russo, and I would say Mike Wilbon. Those guys look like if you pair them together, you can get some honest opinions and some pushback at various points. Those guys would seem like a good combination. And then you have a different moderator. Not a Molly Karam, not one of those people. Somebody that's going to keep it a little bit more funky, a little bit more gully. As you guys know, there's been some pretty big news surrounding the NBA and its media right deals. As you guys know, their contract expired with some of the networks. They were coming off of a $25 billion deal, and now they just re-upped for another deal, which is roughly 3 times the size of that other deal, for a $77 billion deal over 11 years. And the major partners in this deal are, of course, let me just get it here, ESPN, NBC Universal / Peacock, and Amazon. And if you notice those 3 names, there's one particular name missing, and that name is Warner Brothers Discovery with TNT, right, with Turner. And that's really where we kick off this entire thing. As you guys know, with this new, agreement in place, it cut out Warner Brothers, which featured probably the #1 show in all of the NBA, which is Inside the NBA. And we're no longer going to have Charles Barkley or Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, and Shaq covering the NBA after next season is over, because after that, their show is going to be canceled. And with that, it has brought on a lot of conversation and a range of opinions. And one of those people that are absolutely not happy about this news is Charles Barkley himself, right? Charles Barkley has been very, very upset with this, with this development, and he basically took it upon himself to essentially call out the NBA and its players for basically, prioritizing revenue and profits over NBA fans, right? And he said it's an absolute travesty that they just decided to cancel a show or kill a show that so many fans love, just for the simple fact that they wanted to get in bed with companies like Amazon, because they're going to have the amount of money that they would need to pay them moving forward. So what happened recently, he had a sit down on the Dan Patrick show. This just came out yesterday. And during his sit down, he was basically talking about the NBA and talking about the players who decided to prioritize profits over the fans. So these are the comments that we want to get into today. So what we'd like to do now is like to play exactly what Charles Barkley had to say about the NBA choosing to basically, get rid of that show and get rid of Warner Brothers, and then the NBA players going along with it. So I want to play that for you now, and I'm going to come back and react to this comment. Take a listen to what Charles Barkley had to say here.
How did we get to this point?
Money. The money's just gotten so astronomical, and the owners they need this money to pay these players, and the fans are the big loser, but they need this money to pay the players. Dan, I was telling some friends of mine, you know how old I am? I remember the first time an NBA player made $1 million, we were going around the locker room high-fiving each other. And I'm talking like, I'm in the locker room with Dr. J, Moses, Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney, Clement Johnson, all these guys. We can't, and this was like 86, 87, I think. The first time an NBA player made $1 million. We were high, they're like, we can't believe it. And now $1 million, that's per diem.
Your boss at TNT probably didn't help the cause when he said that we don't need the NBA. So I wonder what the priority was with the NBA. Like, we want it, but we want it at a certain price?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that, to be honest with you. Did that have something to do with it? Not really, because we did say we would match. So yeah, but they didn't give us an opportunity. What I really think happened was, because they bought in another partner, this was a last-ditch cash grab by the NBA and the players. That's why I think they signed an 11-year deal. So they're like, hey, let's get as much money as we possibly can right now. This is going to be our last bite of the apple, because TNT, ABC, ESPN, they're not going to pay more money going forward. That's why I think they're like, hey, you know what? Let's get in bed. And I'm not blaming, because I love Adam. Hey, let's get in bed with the streaming, because they're going to be the only people who can afford us in 11 years.
So you heard what Charles Barkley had to say about that. What are my thoughts on this? The NBA wanting to make more money on this product, I think, is a natural thing. I think all of us want to make more, want to improve more, you want to earn more as time goes on, right? So the NBA certainly wanted to do that, and they did just that, right? They did just that. They found a way to triple their revenue over the next 11 years. So kudos to the NBA, right? Kudos to the NBA. They wanted to make more money. The wrinkle here is really them deciding not to go with Warner Brothers after they match the offer. That's the part where things get complicated. And as you guys know, Warner Brothers is going to be suing the NBA. They're going to be suing them, and they're going to go to court, and that's going to be something entirely different. So that's the strange part about this. But the NBA and the league wanted to make more money, I think, is something that every business usually wants to do, right? Now, it changes the dynamic, because now if you want some of these games, you're going to have to sign up to Amazon. Now, what's interesting is, and someone in the comment section pointed this out to me, he said, if you already use Amazon, if you already have an Amazon account, you already get Prime. So you already have access to it, which was something that was unclear to me. But let me tell you what Amazon is going to be getting in this deal, which they're paying $1.8 billion for. Amazon is going to be getting an NBA conference final every other year, Thursday night games once the NFL season ends, weekly Friday or Saturday night games all season long, Emirates in-season tournament, early round playoff games similar to NBA TV's current package, international rights, unspecified WNBA package. Now, the interesting part about this deal is this. It says weekly Friday or Saturday night games all season long. So if you want to partake and watch those games, you're going to need to be using Amazon. Now, I have access to all the games because I watch them on NBA.com. I paid for the season subscription that renews every year, so I get to watch all the games. I can watch the Olympic games and all. I just go to NBA.com, and that's where I watch it. They charge me, I think, it's $100 and something a year. I forgot what the price is, but that's what I pay, right? So that's why I watch all the games. But the NBA wants to move its revenue forward, and I can almost envision the players being a part of it in terms of them wanting to make it happen. Right. And, this is business. This is just what it is. Sometimes they're going to prioritize money over fans. Now, here's the important part to pay attention to. Should a business want to grow its revenue and make money? I think, yes. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think, however, one thing has to be at the center of all of it, which is, number one, in this case, the fan experience and the product itself. If you want to increase your revenues while diluting the product or promoting it or selling an inferior product, then we have problems, right? Then we have problems. And there are a lot of people that afford that. They're like, if it's going to make money, let's do it. I'm totally against that. It's not every single thing that makes money. You got to do it, right? It's not every single thing. Money, yes, is a driving factor, but there should be other things that inform the decisions you make that will bring you money. Otherwise, you're just going to be, anybody that brings you money, you're going to do it. And you don't want to be in that group, right? You want to make money, but you also want to have some parameters in place. In this particular case, the NBA probably sees the league is going in a different direction, and they probably want to move it in that direction.